Even when you ain't got shit left, tell yourself it ain't over.
Everything I ever been and everything I ever thought I was gonna be is gone.
Families are complicated.
Not my family. I ain't going out like that.
I don't want to live forever. I just want to die last.
We can't fix all that wrong shit.
Raquel Thomas built an empire on bodies, lies, and one son who never stopped watching. Now, in Power Book 3, Raising Kanan Season 5, Episode 8, the series finale titled Unconditional Love, the empire runs out of road. 5 seasons. That's how long it took for Raising Kanan to go from a scrappy prequel nobody expected much from to arguably the strongest spin-off in the entire Power universe. And now it all comes down to one final hour. Starz has confirmed that Episode 8, titled Unconditional Love, airs August 7, 2026, and the official synopsis is deliberately short and heavy. Everything has led up to this. No fluff, no teaser plot points, just a flat statement that this is the end. When a show that has spent 5 years building out an entire criminal dynasty gives you a 4-word description for its finale, that is not an accident. That is a warning. Let's talk about why this ending matters so much, because Raising Kanan was never supposed to be this good. When it was announced back in 2019, plenty of fans assumed it would be a side dish, a minor detour while the real story stayed with Ghost and Tommy in the original Power. Instead, showrunner Sasha Penn built something that stood entirely on its own. He has been public about the fact that 5 seasons was always the plan, not a network decision forced on him. In interviews around the announcement of the final season, Penn said he had been able to tell the entirety of the story he set out to tell all the way back in 2019, and he specifically promised that the stakes for Kanan and the entire Thomas family had never been higher heading into this last stretch. That is a showrunner telling you, on the record, that the finale is built to hurt. And to understand why Unconditional Love hits so hard as a title, you have to understand what the Thomas family has already lost. This is a family that started the series as a tight, if criminally minded, unit, Rack, her brothers Marvin and Lulu, her son Kanan, and her niece Jukebox, who everybody just calls Juke. Over 4 seasons, that unit has been ground down piece by piece. Lulu is gone. The relationship between Rack and Kanan detonated in the Season 4 finale when Kanan, blaming his mother for the deaths of his best friend Famous and his girlfriend Crystal, put a gun to her head as the screen cut to black. That cliffhanger set the tone for everything Season 5 has been building toward, and now, according to the most recent episodes leading into the finale, Marvin has been killed as well, reportedly at Kanan's own hand. If that holds up in the finale, it means 2 of Rack's brothers and her entire sense of family loyalty have been wiped out in the span of 1 season, and the only people left standing from the original Thomas crew are Rack, Kanan, and Jukebox. That's the unconditional love the title is pointing to. Not romance. Family. The kind of love that survives betrayal, survives violence, and gets tested right up until the credits roll. Season 5 also introduced Branford Breeze Frady, played by Shay McMore, a character who has existed in Power lore for years as a name other characters mentioned, but who fans never actually saw on screen until his debut at the end of Season 4. Bringing in a character with that much built-in mythology for the final season was a deliberate move, and it tells you Penn wanted the ending to reach backward into the larger Power universe, not just wrap up Raising Kanan in isolation. Because here's the thing people sometimes forget, this isn't just the end of one show. Raising Kanan is the last of the original wave of Power spin-offs to wrap up. Power Book 2, Ghost already ended. Power Book 4, Force already ended. Raising Kanan was the one given a full 5-season run, and once this finale airs, that entire first generation of spin-offs is officially closed. What comes next is Power Origins, a prequel that reaches even further back, and eventually Power Legacy, which is set to focus on the dynamic between Tommy and Tarek. So this finale isn't just closing a chapter on Kanan, Rack, and Jukebox. It's closing the book on an entire era of the franchise before the story shifts direction completely. That context matters when you think about what Unconditional Love actually has to deliver. It has to give Rack some kind of resolution after 5 seasons of her clawing for control over a business, a family, and a legacy that keeps slipping through her fingers. It has to give Kanan a version of the ending we already know is coming, because anyone who has watched the original Power series knows exactly what kind of man Kanan Stark grows up to be. And it has to give Jukebox, arguably the character with the most unresolved trauma left on the board, some kind of turning point, especially with her father Marvin reportedly dead and her role in the wider Power timeline still largely unexplored. Hailey Kilgore has been quietly one of the most compelling performers on this show, and if the finale is smart, it uses her as the emotional gut punch of the hour. So that's where we stand heading into August 7th. A show that never had anything to prove and proved it anyway. A family reduced to 3 people who all have very different reasons to distrust each other. And a title, Unconditional Love, that could either be a tragic irony or the one flicker of hope this brutal show allows itself before the screen goes black for good. In the next section, we're going to break down exactly what's been building toward this finale across the back half of Season 5, and lay out the real questions this final episode has to answer. To understand what Unconditional Love has to deliver, you need to understand exactly what happened right before it, because Episode 7, penultimate means second to last, did not leave the door open for a quiet finale. That episode aired July 31st, 2026, and by the time it ended, one of the show's core family members was dead and the entire chessboard had been reset. Here's what went down. Pressure had been building on Kanan and Rack from multiple directions all season, from Stefano Marchetti and from Snaps and Pop, the older mentors who had been steering Kanan's rise since the very beginning of the series. According to reporting on the episode, the order eventually came down from that trio to eliminate both Marvin and Rack, putting Kanan and Breeze in position to carry it out. By the end of the hour, only one of those 2 killings was confirmed. Kanan gunned down his own uncle, Marvin, inside a church. Rack survived, at least for now. What makes this different from everything else Kanan has done this season is the emotional temperature of it. Earlier in Season 5, Kanan killed his other uncle, Lulu, but that death was framed as an accident, something that happened in the chaos rather than something Kanan chose. There was hesitation, too, in an earlier moment where he had Rack at gunpoint and didn't pull the trigger. Marvin's death carries none of that hesitation. Multiple outlets covering the episode described it as a cold, deliberate execution rather than an explosion of rage, even though rage would have been justified. Marvin had beaten Kanan badly just 1 episode earlier, in Episode 6, after learning that his nephew was responsible for Lulu's death, and Kanan reportedly survived that beating only because Jukebox stepped in. So by the time Kanan corners Marvin in that church, this isn't payback delivered in the heat of the moment. It's a decision. And that distinction matters, because it's the clearest signal yet that the show is done softening who Kanan is becoming. Meanwhile, on the other side of the story, Jukebox wasn't sitting still either. In the same episode, she got her own brutal moment of payback, taking out Snaps and Pop in Central Park. Think about what that means heading into the finale. The 2 mentors who spent years pulling strings behind Kanan's rise in the drug trade are gone, killed by the one family member Kanan might have still trusted. That reshuffles everything. It means Kanan walks into the finale without the 2 people who built his criminal education, and it means Jukebox walks in having proven she is no longer the person standing on the sidelines absorbing everyone else's violence. She is now someone who delivers it. And then there's Rack. Multiple entertainment outlets covering the fallout from Episode 7 describe her situation heading into the finale in almost identical terms. She is facing pressure from every direction, her alliances are crumbling, and for the first time in the show's run, there is truly nothing standing between her and her son. Flossie has already cut ties with her. The people she once used as leverage are dying one by one. Reporting on the finale build-up has been direct about where this is heading. There is no longer anyone left to absorb the collision between Rack and Kanan, and while Kanan appears to be operating from a position of total power right now, Rack is described as someone who still has plenty of fight left in her precisely because she has nothing left to lose. That's a dangerous combination for a series finale. A cornered person with nothing to lose is often more unpredictable than the person who thinks they've already won. Here's the piece of information that actually reframes the entire finale though, and it comes straight from series creator Sasha Penn has confirmed that this final season was always designed to answer every remaining question about the Thomas family, and specifically, to definitively explain how Kanan comes to kill Jukebox. Something Power fans already know happens in the original series timeline. Since Raising Kanan is a prequel. Read that again. The show's own creator has publicly confirmed that Kanan eventually kills Jukebox, and that Season 5 exists to explain how that happens. That single fact changes how you should be watching this final episode. It's not really a mystery of whether Jukebox survives the larger Power timeline. We already know she doesn't, eventually. The real tension of Unconditional Love is whether it happens in this episode, or whether the show chooses to leave that final act off screen, saving it as an implication rather than a scene, letting the audience sit with dread instead of confirmation. It's also worth noting what Penn has said won't happen. Reporting around the finale build-up has been consistent that Kanan's own death is not expected in this final episode. This isn't the end of Kanan's story as a character. It's the end of the story for other people around him. That's an important distinction, because it tells you the finale isn't structured as a bloodbath that wipes the board clean. It's structured as a transformation. Kanan walks out the other side of unconditional love, already partially formed into the man we eventually meet in the original Power series, and the finale's real job is deciding exactly which relationships get sacrificed to finish building him. So heading into the final hour, here's where every major piece sits. Marvin is dead, killed by Kanan in a cold, calculated act. Snaps and Pop are dead, killed by Jukebox in retaliation. Rack is isolated, out of allies, and cornered, but according to the show's own framing, far from finished. Kanan is, for the first time in the series, essentially unopposed. The people who once controlled him are gone, and the people who once protected him are gone too. And Jukebox, the character Sasha Penn has directly confirmed is tied to Kanan's darkest future action, is walking into this episode as someone who has just proven she's capable of extreme violence herself. In the next section, we're going to break down exactly what that means for the finale's biggest question marks. Whether Rack survives, what unconditional love really means for the Thomas family, and how this final hour sets the stage for Power Origins. So let's get into the real question everyone is going to be asking after this finale airs. Does Rack survive? Based on everything reported around the build-up to unconditional love, the answer isn't a clean yes or no, and that's actually the smartest thing this finale has going for it. Coverage of the lead-up describes Rack as someone with nothing left to lose, which in television terms almost always means one of two things. Either she goes down fighting in a way that finally earns her some kind of dignity after 5 seasons of losing everything and everyone, or she pulls off one final move that lets her walk away from this life entirely, disappearing from the world Kanan is about to fully inherit. Both outcomes fit the title. A mother who loses everything but still finds a way to protect what's left of her son, even from a distance, is its own version of unconditional love. So is a mother who dies refusing to let her son see her broken. What we do know, straight from reporting on the show's own creative team, is that Kanan is not going to die in this episode. That takes one major possibility off the table and replaces it with a more interesting one. How do you end a prequel series when the audience already knows the main character survives, rises, and eventually becomes one of the most dangerous men in the Power universe? You don't build tension around whether he lives. You build it around what he loses to get there, and who he becomes in the process of losing it. That's exactly the storytelling lane unconditional love appears to be operating in, based on everything confirmed so far. And that brings us back to the detail that should be sitting heaviest with anyone watching this finale. Sasha Penn's confirmation that Season 5 was built specifically to explain how Kanan eventually kills Jukebox in the original Power timeline. That's not speculation pulled from a trailer. That's the show's creator, on the record, telling us where this relationship ends up. Knowing that going into the finale changes every scene between the two of them from this point forward. Every conversation, every quiet moment, every flicker of loyalty between Kanan and Jukebox now carries the weight of an ending we already know is coming, somewhere down the line. The only real question left is whether unconditional love shows us that moment directly, or whether it plants the seed and lets the actual act happen off-screen, in a future story the franchise hasn't told yet. Given how much this final season has focused on stripping away every person close to Kanan one by one, Lulu by accident, Marvin by cold calculation, Snaps and Pop by Jukebox's own hand, it would be consistent with the season's pattern for Jukebox's fate, whatever form it takes, to land as the emotional center of this finale rather than a background detail. There's also the matter of what this episode has to do structurally, because a series finale for a show like this isn't just closing out Season 5, it's closing the door on an entire chapter of the Power franchise. This is the last of the original spin-off trilogy to wrap up, following the endings of Power Book 2, Ghost and Power Book 4, Force. Once Unconditional Love airs, the franchise pivots hard toward Power Origins, a prequel reaching even further back into this world, with Power Legacy, centered on Tommy and Tarek, already confirmed to be in development after that. That means this finale is likely doing double duty, closing the Thomas family's chapter while quietly setting pieces in motion for where the franchise goes next. Watch for any scene that feels slightly disconnected from the main Rack-Kanan Jukebox conflict. Those moments are usually the ones planting flags for Power Origins. What makes Unconditional Love genuinely compelling as a finale, rather than just a checklist of deaths, is that the show has spent this entire final season earning the collision it's about to deliver. This wasn't a season that rushed to a bloody ending for shock value. It built there methodically, an accidental death that could almost be forgiven, followed by a deliberate one that couldn't, followed by a retaliation that proved the family's youngest member was no longer someone to underestimate. By the time Rack and Kanan finally stand across from each other with nothing left between them, the show has made sure you understand exactly what it cost to get there. That's the difference between a finale that feels earned and one that just feels loud. And that's really what this ending is going to be remembered for, whichever way it plays out. Not just who lives and who doesn't, but what it means that a mother built an empire trying to protect her family, and it was that same empire that tore the family apart from the inside. Rack spent 5 seasons trying to control everything around her, and the one thing she could never control was her own son, watching, learning, and eventually becoming exactly the kind of man she raised him to survive as. If unconditional love delivers what this final season has been building, it won't just be a violent send-off. It'll be a reckoning, the kind where every character has to answer for who they chose to become, and the audience is left sitting with the uncomfortable truth that love, in this family, was never really unconditional at all. It always had a price. That's where we stand heading into Power Book 3, Raising Kanan Season 5, Episode 8. A mother with nothing left to lose. A son who's already halfway to becoming a legend the franchise has been warning us about for years. And a cousin who might be walking straight toward a fate the show's own creator has already confirmed. August 7th is going to hurt. And honestly, that's exactly what a finale like this should do. If this breakdown helped you get ready for the finale, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Subscribe if you want breakdowns like this for every major Power Universe episode moving forward, and drop a comment down below letting me know what you think actually happens to Rack, and whether you think we see the truth about Jukebox in this finale or not. I'll be back with a full recap the moment Unconditional Love airs. Until then, take care of yourselves.